WSBT 22 News, the #1 newscast in Michiana, morning, noon, and night.
We know your time is valuable, so we give you the information you need now with no delay and break down the weather hour by hour so you know what's coming next.
Parents trust WSBT 22's Operation Education to help them stay on top of what's going on in their kids' schools.
Frustration for teachers in Indiana right now.
You rely on us to hold elected officials accountable, and that's why we continue to go beyond the podium.
We had a chance to touch on a lot of different issues.
Keeping you and your family safe with vital information in Eye on Health and Crime Watch.
To use deadly force, you darn well better be in the right.
And as the pandemic pushes on, more and more viewers are turning to WSBT 22 News.
There is some urgency to get people vaccinated.
Trusting us to help everyone get through this together in the path forward.
Watch WSBT 22 News, always first, fast, accurate.
The #1 newscast in Michiana and the most trusted.
We just stood still, tried to stay silent. I didn't have my phone with me, so I couldn't tell anyone. You know, I thought like, oh my gosh, like what if I actually die and I'm not able to like tell my parents.
Frightening moments inside the University Park Mall in Mishawaka as shots ring out. Outside, people comfort one another after that shooting claims the life of a 23-year-old man. It is breaking news we've been following all afternoon and evening. The call came into police just before 3 o'clock, and tonight we are learning new details from police. We have team coverage for you. WSBT 22's Erica Finke talked to workers at the mall about what they saw and heard. But let's begin with Max Lewis, who's live at Metro Homicide with new details from investigators. Max.
Caroline, good evening. Within the last couple of hours, we learned that the 23-year-old killed in this shooting is identified as Delaney Crosby. This massive investigation is still ongoing, with dozens of witnesses being interviewed and a huge crime scene being processed. Investigators say this was an isolated incident, and the suspect is now on the run. Chaos erupted inside the University Park Mall in Mishawaka shortly before 3 o'clock this afternoon. People running for their lives after several shots rang out inside.
The group was being really loud and noisy and rowdy, and next thing you know, like probably about 5 seconds after I saw them, shots were fired. I stepped back into the back where you couldn't see me. I was not visible to anybody. And as soon as things calmed down, I went and I looked, and there was the body.
Police say two men got in an argument outside a jewelry store on the mall's west side. One of them pulled out a gun and shot the other, killing him. Investigators say they have leads and are working to track down the shooter. Wells also said that the shooter was incredibly stupid to do what he did. They are still interviewing witnesses and encourage anyone who was in the mall at the time and may have seen anything to give them a call. They're also addressing an Instagram post that's been circulating online where someone claimed credit for the shooting. They have since said that that claim was untrue. Crime scene technicians will be at the mall throughout the night. It's still unclear if the mall will reopen tomorrow. Live at St. Joseph County Metro Homicide, I'm Max Lewis, WSBT 22 News. Now back to you.
And people who were shopping or working at the mall never expected anything like this to happen. Our team coverage continues now with WSBT 22's Erica Finke, who's live at the mall. Erica, you were there right after the shooting happened.
It was hectic. There were cars trying to leave and police trying to secure the scene. Meanwhile, there were workers and customers waiting outside and shocked that this even happened.
Next thing you know, we hear just a bunch of screaming and just everybody running towards like the food court area.
People in the mall when the shooting happened say it was near JCPenney, Champ Sports, and Pat's Pets. Olivia Brissett works at Sephora. She says they dropped everything and headed for the back rooms and were terrified when someone tried to get into the store nearby.
We heard the multiple gunshots, and we had two customers with us, so we rushed them in the back, and then we just went into our bathroom and locked the door. We did hear the shooter next door, Francesca, is banging, he's saying, open this door.
Megan Nunemaker works at Francesca's Collections. She says she and her boss had trouble putting the gate to their store down, so all the workers and customers hid in the bathroom. Nunemaker says they were all shaking and crying, and even though they were only in there for about 10 minutes, she says it felt like they were waiting for hours.
And then we heard someone come in our back door. It wasn't the police. They didn't say anything. They were opening the door aggressively, trying to look for money, I assume, and we just stayed absolutely silent, not knowing if they're gonna shoot us or anything.
Nunemaker says the police eventually came store to store to let everyone out safely. She says it's changed her perspective on life, and she says she hopes the mall hires more security.
This shows you that it can happen anywhere, any restaurant that you might be in, any mall, anything like that. And so like just really like cherish the days that you have, because I mean anyone could die at any point in time. It's really scary.
As Max stated, the police are continuing to look through video footage and interview witnesses. And at this time, we actually don't know if the University Park Mall will be open tomorrow. Live in Mishawaka, I'm Erica Finke, WSBT 22 News.
Brand new information tonight at 6 on breaking news we've been following all day.
The subject of a manhunt in St. Joseph County is dead after a shootout with police. Police say they were serving a warrant on this man, 30-year-old Rodney Ross. WSBT 22's Caitlin Connon just wrapped up talking to investigators, and Caitlin, an officer, and a police dog were also shot.
That's right, Todd. We understand that that officer is expected to be okay. In fact, he may be released from the hospital tonight. Unfortunately, we're still waiting updates on how that dog is doing. Police say this all started when they tried to serve a warrant to Rodney Ross. They say he fired on them, they fired back, and then Ross ran. For several hours, Ross hid in the neighborhoods between Cleveland, Darden, Riverside, and Lilac Roads near South Bend. Eventually, police were able to get close to Ross again. Now we know that Ross has been involved in similar run-ins with police in the past. In 2017, he was involved in a Mishawaka SWAT raid. That was after police tied him to a gun store burglary.
We do have the risk of severe weather today.
When severe weather hits, we alert you first.
This storm system is getting close to Indiana right now.
It is going to pack quite a punch.
Staying with you throughout the storm, keeping you safe.
The main threat here is straight line winds.
Thousands without power right now.
When you've got 90-mile-an-hour winds, it doesn't matter if it's twisting or going straight at you. It's going to do damage.
Before the storm hits, turn to the WSBT 22 Storm Alert Weather Team, on air and online.
There's already been reports of damage in our local area. Those damage reports are going to be continue to become more common, I think, as people get out behind these storms.
I think a tornado went through my neighbor's house. Holy cow. His trees are obliterated. His grain bins blew over. Jeez. His barn blew over. That was a barn with the grain bins. Holy cow. It's like 4 miles from my house. And there's the path of the tornado or something. Jeepers. Well, he didn't get blown away.
Now, that video was sent to us from Ashton Wood in Wakarusa. You can hear in the video that he believes a tornado went through a field and destroyed his neighbor's barn.
That damage is impressive. Wakarusa was one of the hardest hit areas. Madison Township firefighters were out helping with cleanup after that storm. WSBT 22's Max Lewis is live just west of Wakarusa for us tonight. And Max, several homes in that area had severe wind damage.
Yeah, they sure did, Dana and Todd. It's quite extensive around here. But I really want to show you, the thing, believe it or not, that tells the big story is the corn. Because look at this. These stalks, about as tall as me, they are on the ground all over the place. They're flattened. And this appears to be where some huge gust of wind or something came through, because there is just a path that goes all the way back there. You can't see it because it's dark, but it just goes all the way back and down this way. Looks almost like a boulder was dropped in and just rolled down the street here and across the street. Now, the really big thing is there's this damage at this farm, the Lehman family farm right here. You can see the trees, all of this, all from these really, really strong winds that just came through this area. And bear with me here for a second. I want to take us a little bit over here because like that video you guys showed just to open up our piece, the things that he was talking about, these grain silos, look how big those are. I'd estimate they're probably 20 feet at least. 3 of those, they're now gone. They're lying in a pile of rubble back there. Again, it's dark and it's hard to see. And there's also that barn over there. That's completely gone. All of that stuff completely exposed. Now, I want to take you to some video that we shot earlier today. The family had several friends and neighbors come and try and clean up what they could. They also had the chimney, believe it or not, knocked off the roof of their house, and one of those trees actually fell onto one of the family cars. Here's how the homeowner described what had happened when the storm came through.
I'm looking out the window with my boys, and there's this huge gust of wind. I'm like, we have to get out of here now. I grabbed them both by the arms and just ran into the other room and just ducked for cover. My husband had just gotten in the garage with the mower, and he was trying to close the garage door, and a tree came down, another tree came down, and a tree came down in the back door, so he couldn't even get out. We're on the phone with each other screaming that there's the barn that's down, there's 3 bins that are down, there's crap that's gone. I mean, just everything's gone.
And the Lehman family was really that got the brunt of it, but just down the street, several of their neighbors got some damage too. Several people lost very old, healthy trees. One guy told me that there were some from the 1950s. They are now completely gone, as well as some large patches of shingles from their roof.
We were drinking our coffee, and all of a sudden it started raining and blowing, and it blew through here like a freight train, and by the time we got in the house, it was over.
And there were tornado warnings, I should say, issued for this area. But again, nothing is confirmed at the moment. We do know that the National Weather Service is going to be sending out crews to survey this damage, and they will be able to officially determine whether or not it was a tornado that came through here or just some really, really strong winds. For now, I'm live in Wakarusa. Max Lewis, WSBT 22 News.
Coronavirus under the Golden Dome.
I just feel like the university is not doing a great job of being transparent with us.
WSBT 22's Operation Education investigated the coronavirus breakout at the University of Notre Dame.
This student was refused a test.
I was honestly just like, I don't know what to do.
If these steps are not successful, we will have to send students home.
Keeping you safe, calling for accountability. Operation Education, Mondays and Wednesdays at 6 on WSBT 22.
I asked Notre Dame Vice President Paul Brown about the seniors' experience. This student was refused a test despite being in close contact with 2 people.
Well, yeah, okay, so let me stop you there. The close contact is in the judgment of medical experts.
But the senior tells me the nurse never asked him how long he was with the 2 people who tested positive, or how close he got to them. If she had, he would have told her, for instance, that he spent about 15 hours less than 6 feet away from his girlfriend Monday and Tuesday, and they spent the night in the same bed.
So I'm here in my apartment quarantining because there was no real directive.
He went on to tell me the contact tracers called his girlfriend on Saturday, 5 days after she tested positive, and she told them about the time with her boyfriend on Monday and Tuesday. As of today, the senior has still not heard from contact tracers.
We'll look into those cases where students feel they haven't received the proper information.
This graduate student tells me she woke up Thursday morning feeling terrible, with a headache, a dry cough, a fever over 99, chills, and nausea. She says she called the COVID hotline twice Thursday morning.
After leaving voice messages and just trying to maintain in contact, no one has gotten in touch with me.
I read the grad student a June 15th email from Father Jenkins, in which he promises that when students arrive on campus, all of our initiatives related to prevention, testing, will be fully operational.
I think the phrase fully operational is just completely erroneous.
Fear and uncertainty, that's how
She saw my story last Wednesday about a Notre Dame student who tested positive for coronavirus being quarantined at the Foundry.
My mom was so mad.
She says she woke up Thursday to several calls and texts from her mom and boyfriend telling her to be careful.
I do have an autoimmune disease, so I do have to be a little bit more cautious about, my interactions.
She says she would be particularly vulnerable if she got the virus.
I can have a tendency to get sick easier.
She says her mother's concern was the empty apartment next door.
After your story, my mom was like, what if they're putting people in any empty room?
She says she reached out to the Foundry Thursday morning. She got this reply a few hours later. Notre Dame took out a master lease at one of our new buildings. An email blast will be sent out later today addressing this.
I don't think this lady knew that that's where I live.
Assistant Vice President Dennis Brown responded, throughout the summer, Notre Dame made arrangements with properties near the campus to place students in quarantine or isolation. In the interest of the medical privacy of our students, we are not revealing these locations. I reached out to Elizabeth Gray, a research scientist in health policy and management at George Washington University. She told me, it's unfortunate to see people using HIPAA as justification to withhold information when HIPAA doesn't apply to the situation. In other words, she says HIPAA law doesn't prevent Notre Dame from sharing where they house quarantined students with other students. He says there's a key difference between testing for students and for the entire football team.
It includes coaches and staff who were mandated to be tested. So it's different.
Using Notre Dame football testing data released today and comparing it to the Notre Dame COVID dashboard numbers released today, a fifth of all Notre Dame's testing since August 3rd has been administered to members of the football program.
We felt we should have a regimen that tested them whether or not they were showing symptoms.
But that's the grad student's point. As Brown says, it's the university that has mandated testing for the football program.
So why can't you make the students mandated for tests?
Looking at the ACC's July 29th report, in the sport of football, all members of the football team shall be tested each week, beginning with the week of the first competition against an opposing team. For Notre Dame, the ACC's testing mandate doesn't take effect until September. So the decision to test the football program frequently is the university's as of right now, not an ACC requirement. Every faculty member I spoke to referred back to Notre Dame President John Jenkins' May 26th op-ed in the New York Times. The differences came in the ways they talked about it.
I think it's important to remember the biggest single decision was made unilaterally by John Jenkins back in May.
Sociology professor Richard Williams criticizes Jenkins' central claim that some risks are worth taking, and that reopening the university for in-person classes this fall is one of those worthwhile risks.
Well, if you want to take those risks, fine, but why you have the right to force everybody else to take those risks with you?
There are currently 2 online petitions, one that celebrates Jenkins' decision to reopen in person, and one that calls on Notre Dame to send students home if they want to continue with online classes. Williams is one of the creators of the second petition, and he says while many aspects of the campus reopening went well, the fact that students were switched to online classes after 1 week back signals a major problem with Notre Dame's plan.
Its first full test was done on 15,000 students, faculty, and staff, and that did not go well.
The university's policy and goal is to provide live in-person instruction to our students, and it strikes me that having that as the baseline makes good sense.
When Notre Dame President Reverend John Jenkins, seen here, attended the Rose Garden nomination ceremony for Judge Amy Coney Barrett on Saturday, his decision to not wear a mask set off a social media firestorm at Notre Dame. Do you want him to be forced to resign because of this?
It's necessary to send the message that you can't just continue to fail as a leader and then send empty apologies.
Ashton Weber is one of 3 Notre Dame juniors who decided to create this student Senate resolution. It calls for Jenkins to resign for, quote, failure to comply with COVID-19 protocols. They posted it just after 3 p.m. on Sunday, and 24 hours later, it had the required 200 student signatures. Tomorrow, the Student Senate will review the resolution.
He's a repeat offender, and if he were a student, he would have been expelled.
He's referring to this photo taken in early August, which shows Jenkins shoulder to shoulder with Notre Dame students. He's wearing a mask in the photo, but some students and faculty criticized Jenkins for not following the university's social distancing guidelines. On Monday, Jenkins emailed this apology to students, faculty, and staff. He writes in part, I regret my error of judgment in not wearing a mask during the ceremony and by shaking hands with a number of people in the Rose Garden. I failed to lead by example at a time when I've asked everyone else in the Notre Dame community to do so. Receiving this apology email less than 2 months after a similar email, the 3 students say, feels like an empty gesture.
I know that some of the statements in that email are not true.
Ashton points to this photo from the Rose Garden ceremony. The man sitting to the right of Jenkins with a mask on is G. Marcus Cole, Dean of the Notre Dame Law School.
That's what really makes me most angry about the email. It wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was a deliberate decision not to match the actions taken by the man next to him.
And the national reaction on social media to Notre Dame students rushing the field during a pandemic was just as swift. Jenkins notified students the day after that he was disappointed and that exit testing before semester's end would be mandatory. Articles from national outlets followed.
He comes out today and wants to take a shot at the students. What kind of leader are you?
And it became a point of focus on certain shows as well.
The partying is more concerning than rushing the field.
This time with few masks in sight.
Photos I saw from a lot of parties, the crowds were pretty dense and I didn't see many masks.
And there's reason to be concerned about these photos. If you look at Notre Dame's COVID dashboard, the window of 4 to 6 days after Halloween weekend saw spikes in positive cases, with 39, 72, and 40 new cases during that time. It's the highest 3-day span since mid-August, when President Jenkins shut down campus and switched classes to online only. If there were spikes following Halloween parties, what might the numbers look like following parties surrounding the Clemson game?
That was just very disruptive to my learning. I had to take everything online. It just wasn't the same. I was forced to do online. It wasn't my fault. I was contact traced.
As a freshman, Ella Murphy isn't just dealing with the adjustment to Notre Dame's rigorous academics. She's been forced to switch back and forth between in-person classes and online classes 3 times.
Students that are forced to quarantine or forced to do online for weeks at a time, possibly.
It found more than 1,500 of the 3,700 students surveyed were experiencing moderate to serious psychological distress. In response, Notre Dame Provost Marie-Lynn Miranda emailed faculty on October 21st explaining the results and asking them to consider dropping an assignment or a low grade, canceling class for a day, things like that. But because it was a request and not mandatory, some students say the provost's email didn't change anything.
4 of my professors did not even address the email at all. And one professor did address it in class, mentioned that he understood that we were very stressed, and then gave us another assignment.
Olivia Rubin, Ella Murphy, and 2 others decided to do something about it. They posted a petition asking the university to offer an optional pass, no credit grading system for the fall semester. It had to require 200 student signatures in 4 hours and hit 1,000 within the week. By the time the Student Senate considered it on October 29th, it had 1,300 signatures. The Student Senate passed it 30-4 with 1 abstaining. The 4 students were hopeful the university would agree.
WSBT 22 is known for news, and to understand news, you need perspective. Drone 22 takes you above the story, showing you all angles, bringing you clarity on what's happening as it unfolds. Another way WSBT 22 gives you complete coverage on how the news impacts you.
This area looks a lot different than it did just 7 hours ago. Behind me 7 hours ago was a more than $1 million home. Now it's just been reduced to a pile of rubble. Let's take a look from above with WSBT's Drone 22. As you can see where this house met the shore of Lake Michigan. Originally, when they purchased this house, this view right here was a great view of the lake. But eventually that bluff started to disappear over the last couple of months, eventually taking part of the foundation with it. That sound is what's left of the first floor being smashed into the basement.
You can only do what you can do, and Mother Nature's going to do what she's going to do.
Bruce Smothers renovated this home 15 years ago. He says November storms turned their dream home into a nightmare.
I was cleaning up some stuff, and I went to lunch and came back. I lost about 10 feet that afternoon.
The home began falling into Lake Michigan, and after considering all of their options, the couple had no choice but to tear it down.
And at the end of the day, it all boils down to money. I still couldn't afford to fix the beach. That's $480,000. You're not going to get that back on resale.
The excavator, John Pike, says this is the saddest project he's ever worked on.
Unfortunately, we're tearing down a house that I thought was the wrong address when I first showed up.
But he says with all of the erosion taking place along the shoreline, demolishing nice homes like this could become more common.
Our phone's ringing off the hook for retainment, and I've already looked at a few that if they don't do something fast, this is going to be the case.
Smothers had to get a number of permits for this demolition to be possible. After this is done, he's still going to have to pay for a house that no longer exists.
Oh yes, we have a substantial mortgage on it. The bank owns more of the house than I do.
Their property goes back for 5 acres, but Smothers says he'll never build on this property again.
Because eventually it's going to be creeping back for, I don't know, quarter mile, half mile, I have no idea. So even if you build down there, all you're doing is buying time.
So why did they have to demolish the house? Smothers tells me that if the house had fallen into the lake, it would have been more than $100,000 for the cleanup. Whereas today's demolition only cost around $10,000 and was safer for the environment. Live in Stevensville, Brooke O'Daniel, WSBT 22 News.
New at 6, dreams are literally being swept away as erosion causes destruction along the Lake Michigan shoreline.
That's right. Beaches, roads, even houses are falling into the bluff, and homeowners are really scrambling to find solutions. WSBT 22's Brooke O'Daniel is here in the studio with us tonight. Brooke, erosion isn't just a problem for these people who are losing their homes.
Erosion will end up impacting everyone that lives in a village or city where property is destroyed. These areas are losing thousands of dollars in tax revenue because once that land is lost, the city or county can no longer collect taxes from that property. Joan and Bruce Smothers fell in love with this property the moment they saw it 15 years ago.
When I came and I saw that view, it took my breath away. And I knew right that minute that I wanted to be on the lake.
As recently as a few months ago, they were enjoying the sunset and hosting parties for friends.
It's surreal. I mean, you can't even imagine that 4 weeks ago there were 50 people and you had a wedding here and then it's all gone.
The land in front of their home began to disappear in November. By Christmas, their decks had fallen into the bluff.
Totally shocking. No one, I guess, could have predicted this.
The couple was stunned to learn that their home insurance wouldn't help cover the cost.
You know, if the house had burned down or if a tornado had come through, it would have been covered. It's not covered for this.
Joan says a standard seawall wouldn't even protect their land and would be a more than $500,000 investment, money they don't have to spend.
You'd almost have to put up a 30-foot wall, and then you're kind of defeating the whole purpose of having a lake view. Not to mention who can afford to do that.
Unable to move their home, the couple had to make the heart-wrenching decision to get a demolition permit to demolish it.
We felt like the decision was made for us, that's our only choice.
A decision that means they lose a house that appraised for more than $1.5 million 6 months ago and will cost them additional funds to tear down.
It will cost probably around $10,000 to demolish it and take it away. If it fell in and went into the water, it would be well over $100,000.
They aren't the only ones dealing with this issue, and if the water levels continue to rise, it's going to impact even more people along the coast.
A pity, you know.
Dick Stauffer with Lincoln Township says it's not just homeowners that are going to be impacted. Each time property disappears or a home loses value, everyone in the township will feel the loss.
When a home is demolished, of course, it's removed from the tax rolls.
Those tax dollars impact everyone.
Not only does the county lose, but the schools lose, all the villages lose.
Lincoln Township Assessor John Bauman is concerned about erosion's effect on the entire community.
We're already short on tax dollars as it is, so getting less and less of that because of houses going in or property values declining affects, the things that we can supply our citizens.
This problem happened 30 years ago in the 80s. But each storm that moves through seems to pack a more powerful punch than the last one.
It's like 1,000 freight trains hitting the beach every day on a big storm.
With some areas losing more than 60 feet just in the last few months, Dean Ray says his office has been extremely busy with requests.
I see 30, 40 semis with rocks go by every day. And they're coming from Wisconsin, most of them, some Indiana, to build revetments.
Couples like the Smothers aren't sure what retirement will look like now.
As it either pushes it off or it makes it different. We still have a mortgage on this house. The mortgage doesn't go away because the house went away.
And while it's them suffering today, eventually it will be everyone.
The value of this home and a lot of other people's homes have gone down a good 50 to 75%. When that happens, the tax base drops. You don't have money for schools, you don't have money for roads.
The couple says their home will most likely be torn down in the next 3 weeks, and Joan told me she's not even going to be able to watch it happen.
Wow. And you're right, this does affect everybody eventually. There's the emotional loss, and I can't imagine the financial loss.
That financial loss is very difficult for them, but Joan told me it's going to be even harder to watch her husband's hard work of renovating that home be torn down in a single day.
It does affect so many people. No winners here, obviously.
None.
All right, Brooke, thank you.
Each February, for over 3 decades, WSBT 22 challenges kindergarten through 6th grade classrooms to read. The I Love to Read Challenge encourages reading at a young age. to help students overcome just about any obstacle they may face throughout life. We invite teachers and parents to challenge their students to read as much as they can. Each day, WSBT 22 news anchors visit schools, either in person or virtually, to read to students and answer their questions. At the end of the challenge, we tally up all the minutes read throughout the month of February. Every year, we shatter the previous year's record with millions of minutes read by students. WSBT 22 partners with the largest library system in our area to reward outstanding schools, classrooms, and students. Our community thrives when our youth is safe, has stability, and the opportunity to reach their full potential. WSBT 22 is a proud partner with the Youth Service Bureau, providing solutions to teen homelessness, overcoming teenage pregnancy, and fighting human trafficking.
WSBT has partnered with YSB since 2017, raising more than $386,000 to help young people find immediate safety, shelter, and hope. Funds raised from Over the Edge go right back into the community and help us provide services so that young people in our community will have a brighter future.
From teens to kids of all ages, WSBT 22 also partners with the Salvation Army and Kroc Center in South Bend to make Christmas a whole lot brighter for our local families. Adopt a Family, Angel Tree, and the Red Kettle program raise donations to bring Christmas joy to struggling families in our area.
In a year like we've never seen before, you stepped up and answered the call to rescue Christmas.
You've helped us bless those families who couldn't imagine having a Christmas this year.
Thanks to all the guardian angels, this Christmas will still be magical for many local families in need. Together with your support, we promise to continue doing the most good for St. Joseph County.
It's angels like you that make this season bright and our community strong. So thank you.
First, fast, accurate. You're watching WSBT 22 News at 5 with Jennifer Copeland and Todd Connor.
Breaking news right now at 5. Presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden has selected Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate. The California senator was elected in 2016 after serving as the state's attorney general. Harris competed against Biden for the presidential nomination for the Democrats, but left the race before the primaries. We'll have much more on this developing story coming up.
It's a beautiful day to clean up a mess.
People are here to help. They, don't ask twice. They just come and help us. It's amazing.
Almost 24 hours after a powerful storm just blew through, people in our area still picking up the pieces.
Yeah, they definitely are. The storm packed quite a punch, with 2 different tornadoes being reported. It damaged buildings, downed trees, and knocked out power. Take a look here at the latest report from Indiana Michigan Power. Right now, there are more than 22,000 customers who do not have power. We're talking all the way from Lakeville to Bangor. Now, there are also reported outages in the Fort Wayne area.
And just an hour ago, our team put Drone 22 up in the air to get a bird's eye view of some of that damage. You can see the path of the storms that tore through that field and then hit the grain bins and some barns.
Yeah, we have team coverage for you tonight here at 5 as we are following up on the areas most severely impacted by last night's storm.
But first, we want to get to Chief Meteorologist Matt Rudkin, who tracked the storm all last night for us. Matt, the National Weather Service determined there were 2 tornadoes.
Exactly. So let's focus on that first, and then I want to give an overall summary of what happened. There was 2. One was in far southern St. Joseph County. It happened around the intersection of Dogwood and Riley, far southern parts of the county in Madison Township. Went about 3 miles or so. Thankfully, there's a lot of farm fields down here. I know those of you who live down there, though, it's not so rural, right, when it's your house. Did do some damage to some farm equipment, some silos and whatnot out that way. It was rated an EF1 tornado by the National Weather Service with maximum winds around 110 miles an hour. The other one was in North Webster. And this was a lucky one, too, that was just north of town. It started on the west side of State Road 13, impacted a church, a little damage there, and then stayed over wooded area over North Webster. It's very lucky this happened and not a mile south, because if you've been down this way, right along Lake Webster, there's a ton of houses, obviously, around the lake, which would have been much worse. But it was a little bit farther north, went through wooded area, maximum wind speed with that about 90 miles an hour. Outside of that, there was a lot of wind damage, and I don't want to discount that because I know A lot of you have seen issues, and keep in mind, this is just computer-generated storm reports here. I know there's a lot of areas that don't have blue dots that saw damage. Pulaski County, Cass County, good chunk of Elkhart County had a lot of issues that aren't on here. But I wanted to show you the overall picture. This was a derecho is what we call them. It was a huge wind event that spread across the Midwest and Great Lakes. There it is. It started in the Dakotas, went through Iowa, Illinois, slammed into our area, and then dissipated as it moved into Ohio. So I'm well aware a lot of you have to do a lot of cleanup. It costs a lot. It takes a ton of time to get all that cleaned up. Good news is I've got some good weather for you over the coming days to get some of that work done. Temperatures in the 80s now, fall into the low 70s later on this evening. I'll talk about when you may need to start looking up to the sky for the next chance for some storms coming up here in just a few minutes.
All right, we'll see you then, Matt. Thank you. You know, parts of Michigan were hit hard by that storm. Take a look at this. These are some photos that have been shared with WSBT 22. This tree fell in Buchanan. We have a team in Berrien County right now, and we'll have a report on more damage for you tonight at 10 and 11.
And our team coverage continues with WSBT 22's Caroline Torrey, who's just outside of Wakarusa. And Caroline, there are multiple spots of destruction along County Road 44.
Todd, I saw at least 4 properties in just a couple of mile stretch on this east-west running road with significant damage to buildings and farm equipment. So take a look at your screen, new at 5 tonight. Look at this video of what was a storage and machine shed. The middle of the building is no longer there. The storm tore right through it, ripping the walls up from the foundation. The farmer also saw one of his corn bins crumpled. Less than 2 miles east on the same road, this homeowner reports heavy damage to trees, a shed, and grain bin. Amy Lehman says she estimates a few $100,000 of damage there. She's thankful neighbors, friends, and even some strangers came out to help her family clean up starting early this morning.
People are like, how are you not more shaken up? I'm like, my children are fine, my husband's fine, my family's fine. Nothing else matters. This is just stuff. It can all be replaced.
She says she heard some people on social media call the storm disappointing, but she wants those people to look in her yard to see some of the devastating effects from it. Live outside of Wakarusa, I'm Caroline Torrey, WSBT 22 News.
That storm has left many people cleaning up in Mentone as well. WSBT 22's DJ Manu continues our team coverage with a look at how the storm took out a Little League baseball field.
I'm standing in center field, but these bleachers used to be back there by the third base dugout. It was lifted up and thrown over here along with several chunks of wood. Looking around the diamond, all the bleachers were ripped up and mangled. Ann Yates is a former board member of the Mentone Youth League and says they were just installed last year. The dugouts and fence are also blown over or bent. Another field has mostly downed trees and a bent fence. Luckily, the Little League season is over, but the president says cleanup will have to be quick since other activities are scheduled to use this field later this week. He's hoping insurance will be able to cover the repairs. It's a tough sight for Yates to see, but she says members of her softball team she coaches are planning to come out this Saturday to help with the cleanup.
A lot of us spend a lot of time here during the summers. You know, this is our home, our second home. And then when something like this, but I mean, we have a great community. It'll get back to where we want it to be.
Now, this field is right next to one of the hardest hit neighborhoods here in Mentone. Coming up at 6, I'll show you the extent of the damage and how one man was actually outside when everything was falling around him. In Mentone, DJ Manu, WSBT 22 News.
It's a historic day in college sports. Breaking news right now as the Big Ten has decided to suspend fall sports, including football. WSBT 22 Sports Director Pete Byrne joins us now at the live desk. And Pete, what does this mean?
Well, Todd, while it's not a surprise in light of the reports that have been swirling over the past 24 hours, it is a shock nonetheless. There will be no Big Ten football in the fall. The Big Ten said in a statement that after consulting medical and infectious disease experts, quote, it became abundantly clear that there was too much uncertainty regarding potential medical risks to allow our student athletes to compete this fall. The Big Ten did say that it's looking into whether or not the spring might be a viable option for fall sports to resume. Minutes after announcing the league's decision, new Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren explained the rationale.
The health, the safety, the wellness, and both physical and mental for our student athletes was going to be at the top of my list. And as things began to evolve, you look at the number of cases that are spiking, the number of deaths, not only in our country, in our states where many of our schools are located, but worldwide, is that I promise that all the decisions that we will make during my tenure here at the Big Ten will always put the mental and physical health and safety and wellness of our student athletes at the center.
Now, the Big Ten was the first of 2 Power 5 conferences the fall today. The Pac-12 announcing just less than an hour ago that it has suspended all sports until January 1st. That includes basketball. That's how far out they're going. As for the ACC, which is the temporary home for Notre Dame football, indications today are that the league is still proceeding in an effort to play. In fact, I've just confirmed that Notre Dame plans to practice tomorrow, and I'll have more on that tonight on WSBT 22 News at 6 at the live desk. Pete Byrne, WSBT 22 Sports.
All right, Notre Dame has launched a new resource to track coronavirus cases related to the university. Officials started tracking the information August 3rd. This is all based on tests that have been administered by the Wellness Center on campus. You can see here there have been 67 tests done so far, and 4 tests have been positive.
2 new high schools in South Bend will start their school years this week, and students will be going back in person. Purdue Polytechnic High School will welcome students tomorrow, and River Montessori High School on Thursday. At River Montessori, 14 students are registered for the fall. They will have temperature checks at the door. Students and teachers will wear masks and distance themselves during instruction time. The Montessori model allows for more physical distancing.
A lot of the design features we have for our high school still work really well in a pandemic. So for example, we're a small school. We call ourselves a micro school in that, because at maturity we'll only be 60 to 70 students.
At Purdue Polytechnic, around 30 students are registered for in-person classes, and about 30 others will start virtually. Wednesdays will be an e-learning day for everyone so the school can deep clean.
Bishop Kevin Rhodes is self-quarantining right now after being exposed to someone with coronavirus. A statement from the Fort Wayne South Bend Diocese says Rhodes is still waiting for his test results. Out of caution, though, the bishop will be missing several public events, including confirmation, masses, and meetings.
Phones are just ringing off the hook at one county health department. Officials in Johnson County say people are calling in to report others who aren't wearing masks. The statewide mask mandate has been in effect for 2 weeks now. The health department director says they've gotten calls about stores, restaurants, and school-related events every single day. And dealing with these reports is taking officials away from other duties.
We're trying to still provide well-rounded service with every one of our programs that we do on a daily basis. However, yeah, they will suffer.
The statewide order does not give local officials the authority to issue fines or other penalties for mask violations.
Senator Todd Young visited the Barnes at Napanee today. It's just one of the many local businesses taking a large financial hit because of the pandemic. WSBT 22's Lauren Becker is at the live desk. Lauren, Senator Young is proposing new legislation here that would help the hardest hit businesses.
Jennifer, it's called the Restart Act, and it's a new loan program to provide funding to cover 6 months of payroll and other expenses. It's a loan that would help keep businesses like the Barnes at Napanee surviving in the midst of this current crisis. Now, while taking a tour of the newly renovated Barnes at Napanee, Senator Young spoke to owner and former Congressman Marlin Stutzman about how it would help. It would offer a 7-year loan paid back over a 7-year period. Businesses could receive up to $12 million to help with payroll and basic bills. A share of the loan will be forgiven based on how much revenue the business lost in 2020. The rest of the loan will have to be repaid over 7 years. Stutzman says this is something he would apply for since revenue is way down. Take, for example, the arts and crafts market this past weekend. Only 1/10 of the typical number of visitors came out.
I am very fond of a loan program because I'm willing to pay it back, but I just need the capital right now to get through some very difficult times.
I feel like this is a proper role for government during this emergency time so that businesses like this will continue to grow wealth on the back end of this virus.
The Restart Act would provide more than $1 trillion in loans. Again, this is just a proposal right now, but Senator Young is hoping Congress arrives at a conclusion in the next few weeks. At the live desk, Lauren Becker, WSBT 22 News.
Joe Biden has announced his running mate for the White House. Next at 5, we're digging into this election, plus a look at next week's Democratic National Convention.
I'm Nancy Chin with the women behind these creations and how they're getting their lives back on track.
All right, here's a look at the swim risk, medium to low over the next couple of days. I'll have your full forecast coming up next.
For First to cover breaking news with Jennifer Copeland and Todd Connor. Your accurate storm alert forecast with meteorologist Abby Webler. You're watching WSBT 22 News at 5.
The Democratic Convention begins in less than a week, and we are getting a look at the speaker lineup. And you'll notice some familiar names on there. On Monday, Governor Gretchen Whitmer will be speaking, along with Senators Bernie Sanders and Amy Klobuchar, plus former First Lady Michelle Obama. On Thursday, former South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg will take the stage with Senators Cory Booker and Kamala Harris. Other speeches are included for the rest of the week, including former Presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. Plus, the newly announced vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris will also speak on Wednesday.
You know, Harris was announced just about an hour ago as Joe Biden's pick for vice president. Natalie Brand has the latest developments from the White House.
Joe Biden has made it official. He's picked Kamala Harris to be his running mate. She is only the third woman and the first black woman to be on a major party's presidential ticket. The California senator has known Biden for years after striking up a friendship with his late son, Beau. Harris was considered a frontrunner when she launched her own bid for the Democratic nomination and went after Biden during a primary debate last summer.
You also worked with them to oppose busing. And you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
That was the high point for her presidential campaign. As a former prosecutor, Harris failed to win over progressives who criticized her record of failing to intervene in cases involving killings by police. Biden had promised to pick a female running mate, and he put together a list of 13 candidates that his campaign vetted before he made his decision. He interviewed his top choices in person and remotely and has said his #1 criteria would be that from day one, his VP had to be ready to become president. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
Teen Vogue is tackling the issue of voting rights ahead of the November election. New at 5, the August digital issue is called Suffragettes. It tells the story of 10 voting rights activists who are women of color. The magazine is doing a series that calls out the discriminatory state laws that prevent many non-white Americans from voting.
All right, we've got some quiet weather to enjoy, at least for a few days. I'll update you on that next.
A new outdoor fitness center in Michigan may help you not miss gyms being closed. I'm Bree Isom, and coming up on WSBT tonight at 6, I'll tell you all about the Woods Fitness Park and how you can work on your fitness here.
Now, your accurate storm alert weather forecast with Chief Meteorologist Matt Rudkin.
All right, here's a live look in St. Joe. A lot of you I know up that way don't have power yet, but it looks like the Bluff does. First off, our camera is working, which is good. Obviously requires power. And looks like a lot of people at the restaurant there on the Bluff as well. So hopefully power continues to get restored. The amount of customers is less and less every few hours, so that's good. But I know it's a lot of hard work for the crews, and it's just as hard, right, being patient with them as well. It's 78 degrees, excuse me, at the Southwest Michigan Regional Airport across the river there in Benton Harbor. Dew point is 60, a fairly low number, and it continues to fall, which represents dry air trying to sneak in here. Storm tracker radar, nice and quiet. That's good to see, unlike yesterday at this time, right? Very wide view across Indiana. Good chunk of the mitten there of Michigan looking clear as well. It is 82 in South Bend, 81 up the road in Niles, 79 in Knox, and in Winamac, 81 LaGrange, Syracuse, 82 in beautiful Three Rivers. A wider view shows you not a lot of heat. Not a lot of relief, right? It's just warm. Temperatures in the 80s for a good chunk here of the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. But this kind of tells the story. These are dew points, a measure of moisture in the atmosphere. And when they're lower, it represents drier air, which is the light green color. The darker green indicates more humid tropical air like we've dealt with the past few days. You go outside today, it doesn't feel half bad. Don't get me wrong. It's still kind of humid, muggy, but it's not bad compared to yesterday. And when you get in the 50s, it feels really good. O'Hare reporting 51-degree dew point. That is picture perfect. That's like a spring atmosphere or a fall-like day. Here's Futurecast. I zoomed out so we can get the overall picture. There's not a lot to talk about locally as far as active weather, and that's good. So here's tomorrow morning, lots of sunshine, some clouds, especially south of US 30, but overall, decent amount of sun. As we push through Thursday, much of the same here. A pretty quiet pattern. You'll notice a lot of sunshine for our part of Indiana and Michigan. A little bit of activity to our west. We'll look at the weekend, looking okay. It's just starting to warm up a bit, back into the upper 80s. Next chance for rains on Sunday. Doesn't look very significant. If you didn't get too much rain yesterday, most of us saw like a ½ inch to about 3/4 of an inch. You're going to want to keep the sprinklers going, your irrigation equipment going. There's not a lot of rain in the forecast the next several days, and temperatures warming up. So our normal high as we move into mid-August now is in the low 80s. Most of these days in the mid to upper 80s. There's the chance for rain on Sunday, and you'll notice we cool off just a little bit as we get towards early next week. But all in all, this forecast is basically above average, which has been the trend here for many weeks as we've rolled through summer. Also want to mention, I made this somewhat joke or comment last night that I didn't have time. I need to find time and make a graphic, but overnight tonight, this evening overnight, the Perseid meteor shower is going on. It peaks in August 11th today. So if you get away from city lights, it should be good. If you're patient and just look straight up, put a blanket down, something like that, you'll see a couple shooting stars every hour. It's always good this time of year. I'll make a fancy graphic with like shooting stars with text so you can take a picture and send it to your friends and family about it. It's always fun this time of year.
You know what that is? It's kind of like birthday candles in space for a certain someone.
Thanks.
Happy birthday, Matt.
Thanks, I appreciate it. That's the only reason I remember it's the peak. I'm like, August 11th. If I forget that, then there are bigger problems going on than that.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, a nonprofit is helping women have a second chance at life. Next at 5, how the group is using handbags to help them recover.
You're watching WSBT 22 News at 5.
A nonprofit in New York's Hudson Valley is picking up the pieces, helping women who are recovering from addiction make and sell handcrafted bags.
The job gives them financial independence and purpose. New at 5, Nancy Chen shows us how their stories really aren't so different from the bags they create.
And we get a lot of orders on these.
Savannah Aragon grew up surrounded by gang violence and drugs. She battled a 10-year addiction and served jail time before stitching her life back together.
I was just out there. I felt like I was nothing.
She's now a seamstress at Unshattered, a nonprofit in New York's Hudson Valley that makes and sells handcrafted bags. 8 of the 10 women on the team are in recovery. The average age they began using is 11. One woman started drinking when she was just 5.
I love that pattern.
Kelly Lingard is the founder and CEO.
Most of them didn't have job skills. Maybe they didn't have an education, but most importantly, didn't have a safe community to go back home to.
The bags are made of upcycled, mostly new material from industry scraps like car upholstery, retired military uniforms.
This bag is made from a West Point cadet uniform.
And even sets from Broadway shows. Unshattered sells 3,000 to 4,000 bags a year, with 100% of the proceeds going to the women's salaries and benefits.
Relapse rates for substance abuse disorders range from 40 to 60%. But Unshattered says since starting 4 years ago, the rate for women who work here is 0.
And I think it's proof of our story that when you have community, you have purpose and meaning, and you have economic stability, you can truly thrive and move beyond your addiction.
They recently took on a new project, face masks. Donations from the community allowed the women to remain employed during the pandemic, sewing about 9,000 masks for frontline workers.
To do something amazing like that to help people, you know, and I just think it's awesome.
Reclaim fabrics, helping reclaim lives. Nancy Chen, CBS News, Hopewell Junction, New York.
Online shopping may soon get more expensive. New at 5, UPS has announced new surcharges on companies that ship more than 25,000 packages a week. That's for shipments happening between November 15th and January 16th. UPS is anticipating rising costs as more people shop online over the holidays. It's unclear whether retailers like Target, Amazon, and others will pass on the added cost to customers.
Right now, gun sales are through the roof during the pandemic. According to the National Shooting Sports Foundation, sales are up as much as 95% across the country. Most retailers report that ammo sales have also increased as much as 139%. Retailers say most people who are buying are first-time gun owners looking for home defense.
Within 3 weeks to 2 weeks after the virus started, everybody started worrying about what's happening and places shutting down. And then the next big step is when they talk about defunding police departments and that kind of stuff. That made a big jump again.
The FBI is also reporting a huge increase in background checks. Last year, the agency performed 28.3 million background checks. This year, it's at 22.8 million just by the end of last month.
A heavy storm blew through Napanee last night, causing extensive damage. There were trees on houses, trees on sheds, trees on cars, trees on power lines. We'll have the latest.